You only focus on your little home business and don't bother with the housework.
And so my mother-in-law's regular snide remarks began again. I'm Susan, a 32-year-old web designer. I live with my husband, John, and his mother in our family home, which used to be John's childhood home. Yes, I was employed at a company before I got married, but I decided to go independent and work from home as a web designer after tying the knot. Most of my work comes from referrals from the company I used to work for, from clients who liked my design. They didn't want to lose a valuable resource like me, so they keep sending work my way. This setup is beneficial for both of us. I save on commuting time, and I had also wanted to properly manage my household duties after marriage. Both my former employer and I are satisfied with this arrangement. However, my live-in mother-in-law doesn't seem to find it amusing that I'm working.
She's old-fashioned and often says it's common sense for a wife to become a full-time housewife and support her husband once she's married.
It's different from those old days.
But you're earning the money we're living on. She needs to handle the housework properly, she retorts, seemingly unconvinced. Your wife's not earning much with that home business of hers, is she?
My mother-in-law doesn't seem to understand my job and always refers to it as a home business. I feel like I'm managing the housework well in between my work, but she's discontented because my way of working is different from the full-time housewife she imagines. Baby to her, who deeply cares for her only son. I'm the wicked woman who stole her precious son. She's been throwing sarcastic remarks at me since the beginning of our marriage. She seems to dislike everything I do. Ann told me that she's been relying more on him since his father passed away about 5 years ago. While he does seem annoyed, he also seems happy to be needed by his mother. Our home, situated in a residential area, was purchased by John's father about 30 years ago. The remaining mortgage was paid off with his life insurance, and the house is now in his mother's name. It's just the right size for the three of us, and it even has a room for me to work in, which is a big help. My mother-in-law has been living here for 30 years and seems to have many friends in the neighborhood who often come to visit. When her friends come over, I have to interrupt my work to serve them tea and snacks. When these women of her age gather, they often start talking about the issues they have with their daughters-in-law. Listening to these conversations from my workspace, I can't help but chuckle. They're all trying to outdo each other on how bad their daughters-in-law are. They never have anything good to say about them. When one friend praises me, my mother-in-law doesn't seem pleased.
She's not doing anything great with her work. It's just like a little home business. I wonder how much she's earning. Haha. She's not doing anything great with her work.
She intentionally says it loudly enough for me to hear.
Ali, Personally, my daughter-in-law spends all the money she makes from her part-time job on herself. One friend shared,
In response, another friend said,
but the money my wife earns is hers, and the money her husband earns is for all of us.
Things weren't like that in our day. My Mario began, launching into one of her usual tales.
I put on my headphones to drown her out. I've heard these stories countless times and am tired of them. Even worse, they often disrespect modern wives, and I can't bear to listen. I block out the outside noise and focus on my work. One day, John announced he wanted to get a new car.
I'd see and I've been thinking about getting a new car. Is that okay? He asked casually during dinner.
Why do you need your wife's permission to buy a car?
John hurriedly tried to placate her. Well, it's a car for all of us. I can't just decide on my own.
Indeed, buying a car is a big decision that shouldn't be made alone. Still, my Mile wasn't satisfied and continued to argue with him.
You're the only one with a driver's license, so you should buy whatever car you want.
My poor husband, who usually does whatever his mother tells him to, looked at me helplessly. You can decide, I said, throwing him a lifeline.
Don't constantly ask your wife's opinion, just decide for yourself.
John always checks with me or his mother about everything. It's good that he's not selfish, but it's a bit frustrating how indecisive he is. His father, my Phil, was the type of man who decided everything on his own, and my Mel often complained about it. Growing up witnessing such dynamics, John believes it's wrong to be too assertive. Hutchin, on the other hand, my Mile, who grew up with a domineering husband, believes that's how a husband should be. My Mile's dissatisfaction with John's constant need for approval is directed at me.
Susan is always nagging John. That's why he's become like this. She blames me.
I was taken aback and didn't know what to say.
Yeah. Susan is always complaining. That's why I can't make decisions on my own.
John joined in, blaming me. But I didn't say anything. I defended myself, but it was pointless. John always takes his mother's side. We've been married for about 2 years, but he's never defended me in front of his mother.
When she's not around, he apologizes, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're really the most important to me, but I can't trust him anymore."
He initially seemed considerate of me, but he never stands up for me. I'm starting to wonder if I need to reconsider our relationship. I'm worried about whether I can continue living with John. Kindness and indecisiveness are different things. I wish he would stand up to his mother. About a month later, story at Lysiestine, John's new car arrived.
The smell of a new car is the best. Let's all go for a drive on my next day off, he said gleefully.
His excitement was infectious, and even my Mile seemed happy.
That's a nice car. It must have been expensive, right? But it's okay since it's coming out of your salary, right?
My husband didn't respond to her question, instead enjoying fiddling around with various parts of the car. I was dumbfounded as I looked at that expensive-looking new car. There's certainly a limit, even though I said he could do as he pleased. My husband came into the house in high spirits. I confronted him. How much did that car cost? He answered nonchalantly.
$60,000.
Seeing my shocked face, my husband continued curiously, "But you said I could buy any car I wanted, didn't you?" My mother-in-law quickly took my husband's side.
That's right. You left it up to John, so don't complain now.
I did leave everything up to him at the time, but I wanted him to consider our financial situation as well. Where is that kind of money coming from? I asked my husband, ignoring my mother-in-law's comment.
Well, I'm paying with a loan.
My mother-in-law shouted in his place.
Susan, don't complain. You're not the one paying.
I don't know if she was angry because I ignored her or because she didn't like what I said to my husband, but she glared at me with a fierce expression.
You're a disagreeable daughter-in-law, always complaining about something, even though you're living off John's salary.
My mother-in-law retorted with an unusually harsh tone. I shot back. I have a job too.
What are you talking about? You're not earning much with your part-time job. John makes $5,000 a month.
She looked down on me as if mocking me. I was about to say, that's my salary. But when I looked for my husband, he had disappeared into his room.
I've been patient until now, but I can't take it anymore. I want a daughter-in-law like you to leave as soon as possible.
My mother-in-law went so far as to say that. I had been patient too. I didn't feel like discussing my salary. It seemed ridiculous, and I didn't care anymore. I was frustrated with my mother-in-law's comment, but I was dumbfounded by my husband's attitude. Wasn't it my husband who caused this argument in the first place? His usual indecisiveness had come out again. Okay, I'll leave then, I said, and went to my home office, grabbed my laptop and other necessary items, and left the house. I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later, I told my mother-in-law, who was glaring at me with a scary face. My husband remained holed up in his room.
The next time you come here, make sure you've signed the divorce papers.
My still angry mother-in-law yelled at me.
Did you hear me, useless lady?
And it was the first time I had seen my mother-in-law use such rough language, and I was surprised. I ignored her and stormed out of my in-laws' house. Was she angry because I said I would leave, as she asked? Oh, or was she angry because I confronted my husband about the money? Either way, it was a fact that I wanted to leave this house as soon as possible. Having stormed out of my husband's parents' house, I went back to my parents' house for the time being. What happened all of a sudden? My mother at home was surprised. I don't know what happened, but you can stay here as long as you need to.
I don't know what happened, but you can stay here as long as you need to.
My dad seemed to understand the situation by my unusual expression. I never heard from my husband afterwards. The man who used to treasure me before our marriage is no longer around. I can only think that I was foolish not to see a husband who only listens to his mother-in-law. I'd say I was feeling better after talking to my parents about what happened at my husband's house. It calmed me down. We don't have children. It's better to divorce sooner rather than later. My mom told me, and I agreed. I have a job, so I wouldn't be inconvenienced in my life. Again, on the weekend, my father helped me move my belongings out of my husband's house. My husband was nowhere to be seen, and my mother-in-law didn't appear from her room. I called out in front of my husband's room. Thank you for everything. Could you sign the divorce papers? I slid the divorce papers under the door.
I've signed it in, is this okay?
And a curt voice of my husband came from behind the door, along with the divorce papers. I was sad that our marriage ended in such a way. without saying anything to my mother-in-law. I left my husband's house. It was a house where I had lived for about 2 years, but I didn't have many good memories. I went straight to the city hall and submitted the divorce papers. I wanted to settle it quickly if it could be done with a piece of paper. After the divorce, I stayed at my parents' house and continued my work there. I was thinking of renting a room and living alone, but my mother told me, please stay here for a while. It's much safer than living alone. My father was also against me living alone. John and his mom are strange. They might come to your house. I thought that wouldn't happen, but I felt at ease being with my parents at home. Fortunately, I can work from anywhere, so I decided to live at home for a while. Outside, about 2 months had passed, and I'd had almost forgotten about my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law when a call came from an unknown number. Who could that be? Maybe it's a wrong number. Thinking that, I didn't answer the call. However, the calls kept coming. That rancid cradles. I heard my ex-husband's voice.
Why didn't you answer with the phone sooner? He seemed quite flustered.
Well, it's an unknown number, and besides, we're not related anymore, so I'm going to hang up.
As I was about to hang up, he quickly said, wait. I can't connect my smartphone. Why is that? He sounded desperate.
I wouldn't know. You should check with your phone company. As I replied, I realized something. Are you by any chance not depositing money into your bank account? When we were married, I was depositing money from my salary into the account for paying public utilities. His salary was also transferred there, but it was such a small amount that it wasn't enough. He was selling health food products, but his basic salary was low because it was a commission system. People who get a lot of orders seem to make a lot of money, but he didn't do well. He was receiving almost only the basic salary, so only a few $100s was transferred to the account. I had been depositing money into the payment account at the end of every month, but for the past 3 months, it was only his salary. The argument about the car and me leaving the house was in the middle of the month. The payment for that new car might have already started. My ex-husband on the other end of the phone fell silent. I've been managing all this with my own salary. From now on, you'll have to figure it out on your own. I wanted to say, serves you right, but held back and hung up the phone. My ex-husband probably never told his mother how much he earned. His mother didn't realize that ever since our marriage, we'd mostly been living off my salary. An must have been too embarrassed to admit that he earned less than his wife. I've heard that utilities like electricity and water are not easy to shut off. The first thing that gets cut off is usually the cell phone service. I learned. A few days later, on a quiet weekend morning, the doorbell at my house rang loudly. When my dad answered, he was arguing with someone at the front door. We have nothing to do with you anymore, so leave. Seeing my normally calm father so angry, I knew something was wrong, and my mom and I headed towards the entrance. I just want to see Susan. Hearing my ex-mother-in-law's voice made my heart pound. Just as my dad had predicted, she'd come all the way to our home. But when she saw me, my ex-mother-in-law started yelling at me with a terrifying expression on her face.
Because you stopped depositing money into the account, the electricity and water got cut off.
My parents and I were taken aback. What did she mean the electricity and water got cut off? Just then, my ex-husband arrived, desperately trying to intervene.
Mom, stop it. All this has to do with Susan.
But my ex-mother-in-law shook off John's hand and continued her tirade.
Thump John makes $5,000. Why would the electricity and water get cut off?
You're mistaken. I'm the one who makes $5,000. I corrected her, finally able to share what I hadn't been able to say before. My ex-mother-in-law looked surprised at my words, then turned to John.
That's right. Also my salary. Was all Susan, so
He admitted, his shoulders slumping.
How can you earn so much with a part-time job?
My ex-mother-in-law looked at me as if I was a fox who had tricked her. I've told you before, it's not a part-time job. It's a real job. The color drained from my ex-mother-in-law's face.
How much does John make?
She asked, her voice barely a whisper.
about $500 net.
He answered, his voice almost disappearing. There was a moment of silence, then my ex-mother-in-law said something unbelievable.
Susan, can't you come back? The whole leave us this thing was a joke.
She begged with a low posture, reminding me of someone trying to butter me up. What are you talking about? I'm divorced. I have nothing to do with you two anymore. Even though I firmly declined, my ex-mother-in-law continued to plead in an overly familiar way.
You can just remarry John. If we start the paperwork now, it'll be fine.
My dad stepped in when I was too flabbergasted to respond.
With Danofia. If you don't leave right now, we'll call the police.
At the sound of my dad's intimidating voice, my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law hurriedly left.
Urs, and if you show up again, I'm calling the cops right away.
My father delivered a final warning as the mother and son wobbled away. What a bunch of uncouth people. My mother was astounded, but my father seemed even more furious.
I'm glad you got out of that marriage. Susan!
At Tipsers, a while after that incident, I got an update about the X family from one of John's friends. In the end, John had sold his family home and land and moved into an apartment with his mother. To the new car he'd barely used had been sold too, and the proceeds from the land sale had gone to pay off the remaining loan. He'd cleared his debts, but instead of settling down to work, had blown all his money on gambling. His having squandered the money from selling his family home, he'd disappeared without a trace. His mother, left behind, had developed dementia and been placed in a care facility. I'm doing well in my job now and living alone. I've recently started dating a man I met through work. He's understanding about me being divorced and is very dedicated to his job. He's definitely not the kind of guy who relies on his wife's money to make expensive purchases like John was. We're not engaged yet, but we both feel like we could marry each other. I witnessed my husband cheating. I think it's rare for someone to have that experience. Most people would probably confront their husband after finding proof of their infidelity on their phone. However, I saw it with my own eyes, and it happened in a place and at a time when I never imagined that so many people would witness it. Well, I had always felt suspicious about their relationship, but I never expected to witness my husband cheating in such a public place. My name is Christina. I'm a stay-at-home mom with a 6-year-old son. The day I witnessed my husband cheating, he had the day off from work, and we had planned to go out as a family. But when I woke up, my husband was already gone. I received a message from him saying, "I'm going to take care of my sister, who has a fever of 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. It seems like no one is home today, so I'll be back in the evening." A message saying that came in. I let out a big sigh. I told my son that we were going to an amusement park today, and he had been looking forward to it since the day before. I had heard that my husband had been put in charge of a big project recently, and he hadn't had a break in the last 6 months. So this was supposed to be a rare chance for our family to spend time together. But he went to take care of his sister instead. She's supposed to have a fiancé, so he could have left her to take care of herself. Besides, my husband has a sister complex. The reason he started dating me was because he said I looked like his sister and was wonderful. I remember feeling uneasy about that. I had met his sister a long time ago, and she was a very beautiful and kind person. So, despite considering, I guess looking like her is the highest praise my husband could give me. But I couldn't help feel creeped out by it. My husband used to say, "I want a boy and a girl," and he frequently initiated sex, but since our son was born, the frequency has decreased noticeably. Now it's non-existent. We're still young, and my husband used to be a person who enjoyed sex, so I suspect he might be doing it with someone else instead of me. Well, I could forgive him for betraying me. It's annoying, isn't it? But the problem is that he disappears, even on days when he is off from work like today. It wouldn't hurt to play with our child occasionally, even on a day off. Our child is a daddy's boy, and he starts crying when he realizes his dad isn't around. My husband is too indifferent toward our child. He doesn't even prepare birthday presents, and he doesn't even attend school events, no matter how much free time he has. Sometimes he comes home early, but he immediately locks himself in his room and plays games non-stop. He hardly sees my son's face anymore. As at this rate, my son, who used to be a daddy's boy, will start to see his father as a stranger. Oh, and my husband said he was busy with a big project. That was a lie, because he was rarely home. I asked a former classmate who works at the same company as my husband, "Is my husband really that busy?" I've heard that before. No way. That's sure, if anything, your husband is known as a window-side employee who doesn't have much work and always looks bored. He goes home on time every day. They told me this while laughing. I thought, I knew it. That's exactly what I thought. After all, he was supposedly in charge of a big project, but his salary was still around $1,500, and he didn't look tired from working overtime. In fact, he looked rather well rested. This also made me suspect he was cheating, carrying a ton of dissatisfaction. I finished preparing breakfast. I checked the time and tilted my head. Strange. Normally, even if I don't wake him up, my son would be up by 7 a.m., but it was already past that time. If we didn't hurry, he'd miss the nursery school bus, so I rushed to wake him up. Just in his room, he was still asleep, so I tried to wake him up by saying, "It's morning." A gulp. Instead of a response, all I heard was a pained groan. Worried, I reached out to touch my son's face and felt his forehead. It was very hot. I called my son's name and gently shook his shoulder. He barely opened his eyes and said, "Mom, I can't breathe." I almost panicked. At that time, there was an outbreak of a disease at the nursery school, and I couldn't help but think, could it be my son too? I had heard that there were cases where children died, so I seriously thought my son might not make it. I tried to call my husband in desperation, but he didn't answer at all. This was with no time to wait for a reply to an email. I contacted my mother to ask her for first aid advice. She was a nurse, so I thought it was best to ask an expert. Following my mother's accurate instructions, I quickly prepared an ice pillow and measured my son's temperature. It was over 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. I called an ambulance and made sure my son drank plenty of water while waiting for it to arrive. According to my mother, there was a possibility of heat stroke as well. Considering the risk of infection, I wasn't allowed to ride in the ambulance, so I called a taxi and headed to the hospital where my son would be taken. During that time, I kept calling my husband, even though I knew it was pointless. As expected, it was useless. So with no other choice, I left a message online, hoping he'd see it and come if he was responsible enough. Upon arriving at the hospital, I waited in the hallway outside the emergency treatment room, praying for my son's treatment to be over. At Piquetuis, in the past, my father had been taken into an emergency treatment room and never made it out alive. What if my son doesn't make it either? As I imagined the worst, my mother, who had come to support me, encouraged me. "It'll be okay." And then an hour later, my son was saved. But they said it was best for him to be hospitalized for a week, so he was taken to a hospital room. In the end, my husband didn't come home that day. Next day, I went back home to get some clothes for my son and decided to bring him some fruit as a get-well gift. I thought I'd also greet the doctor who had helped us the day before, so I passed by the emergency treatment room, but suddenly the area became chaotic. Thinking I might be in the way, I decided to postpone my greeting to the doctor. As I was about to go to my son's room, I saw a man and a woman on a stretcher. They were barely covered with a thin blanket and looked almost naked. It seems they're still joined together. It seemed they were stuck together during intercourse. I had never experienced it, but it must be tough. But being transported like this must be so embarrassing. As I was thinking this and trying to pass by, I made eye contact with the man. Least and under normal circumstances, it would be an awkward situation, but it was different for me. I froze. That's because the man was my husband. What are you doing here?
Well, I caught my sister's cold, and,
My husband was at a loss for words. At that moment, I was also confused. What were the odds that my husband would be here after my son was just brought in yesterday? Why was he naked and being transported? And who was the woman he was with? These thoughts were swirling in my head, entering my confusion. I made eye contact with the woman my husband was with. Could sing even in my disarray. I knew this woman was my husband's affair partner. As I glared at her, I realized that her face looked very familiar.
Also, why on earth is Christina here?
It was that voice that reminded me. That's right, the woman was my husband's sister. Brenna, the events of that moment felt incredibly slow. I had been suspicious that my husband was lying about taking care of his sister and meeting another woman. But I hadn't expected this. Even if he came to visit our son, he shouldn't have arrived stuck together with a woman. And that woman was his own sister. This is just too much. Since they were being carried away on a stretcher, I had to suppress my urge to confront them and wait for their treatment. Though they wouldn't be able to escape anyway, so I decided to confront them later. And those thoughts, I went to visit my son, my original purpose, with a sick feeling deep inside my chest. I spent some time in my son's room, trying to sort out my feelings. When I checked my phone, there were tons of messages from my husband online. As expected, they were all trying to cover up the situation. He didn't even mention our son being in the hospital. I decided to keep ignoring him and then waited another hour. That's the doctor who had taken care of my son yesterday appeared. The doctor smiled at me and said, "Your son is very healthy. He seems to be recovering faster than we thought. His fever had gone down and his condition had completely stabilized." Initially, we were worried about an infection, but it turned out he had heat stroke along with a cold.
Did you make him drink a lot of water? That was the right thing to do. Your son must be happy to have such a smart mother.
The doctor even praised me like that. It was more thanks to my mother. I should give her some fancy meat as a present next time. I deeply bowed to the kind doctor and expressed my gratitude, but it wasn't hard to imagine that I'd soon face a huge ordeal. Just as I was relieved about my son's condition, my anger was bubbling up inside of me. Mama's face is scary. I scared my son. I quickly put on a smile and told my son, "I'll be back soon." As I left the hospital, I called my husband, who had left over 100 missed calls. The moment he answered the phone, he started making excuses.
it wasn't what it looked like. There was a reason.
And so he started making excuses. He got his priorities wrong. Shouldn't he be worried about our son first? Well, there was no way a man who was so engrossed in an act with his own sister without caring about our son would worry about him. Big with a husband like this. I worried about our son's future. I couldn't see my husband's personality improving, so I decided to divorce him. Life might be tougher, but I can do it for my son's sake. So you were busy with that, even when our son was suffering, huh? I bet you were doing it whenever you had free time, right? And with your own sister. That's just disgusting. I said to him. He was speechless. I continued, "Oh, and by the way, I've already reported this to your parents. I won't tell your company, though. It would be a problem if you couldn't pay alimony and child support. So goodbye." Went that. I said my final words to my husband. 3 days later, my son's health had fully recovered earlier than expected. So I completed the discharge procedure and returned home with my beloved son after a long time. Of course, my husband wasn't there. After that incident, my husband came to apologize in person, but I handed him the divorce papers I had already signed. He begged for forgiveness, saying this was the first time. "Forgive me for just one mistake. You're all I have." But in a cold voice. I told my husband, "You're still lying at this point? I already know everything. Your sister confessed it all." Yes. They anticipated that my husband wouldn't agree to a divorce easily. So, to silence him, I first approached his sister, who was involved in the affair. "Dear sister-in-law, I heard you're going to have a wedding ceremony with your boyfriend soon. Congratulations."
Thanks you.
I wanted to send a congratulatory message, but I came up with a great story. Please want to know what it is. You're not planning to tell everyone about this, are you? Yes. I want everyone to know what kind of person you are. This will make it clear in one go. I smirked.
Please don't do that. It would ruin my life.
Pretending to consider. I continued with a smile. Well, I guess I have no choice. How about this? I'll keep quiet about this if you tell me in detail how many times you did it with my husband. Then I'll keep quiet. Of course your brother will still feel betrayed. What will you do? Without hesitation, my sister-in-law confessed everything.
Please don't tell him. I'll tell you everything.
And she easily confessed everything. Just when I told my husband about it, he fainted from the shock of being betrayed by the sister he loved more than anyone else. After waking up, he signed the divorce papers and left the house with a heavy heart. From there, I went through a lawyer to demand a divorce, custody of our son, alimony, and child support from my husband. He initially haggled over the amount, but when I whispered in his ear, "Do you want me to spill the beans to your company?" He replied, "All right, they'll pay the amount you requested." He left the lawyer's office. After that, for some reason, his company found out about the incident, and he was called in and severely reprimanded. That's a month later. My husband got fired from his job and now works at a food factory, putting strawberries on cakes to pay for alimony and child support. For some reason, people at the factory knew what he did, and he's always the subject of rumors among young girls, making him feel uncomfortable. As for my husband's sister, despite me not revealing the truth, the whole incident came to light, and her engagement was called off. Apparently, her boyfriend, who suspected her of cheating just like me, had hired a private investigator to check on her. She was demanded a large amount of money as compensation for the broken engagement, and now she works at a nightclub. The other day, her ex-boyfriend gave me a photo of them in the act, saying, "Use it if you need to." I wondered what kind of nerve he had to give such a thing to a woman like me, but I decided to keep it in my drawer. In case my husband contacts me or tries something. I'll gratefully use it. I moved back to my parents' house for a fresh start and am raising my son with their help. My parents, who lived far away, were sad that they couldn't see their grandson often, so they offered to help as much as possible. I don't want to rely on them too much, so I'll only lean on them when I need to. By the way, my son has been in perfect health since that high fever, as if it never happened, and has been awarded for perfect attendance for 3 years now. He seems to have completely forgotten about his biological father and enjoys every day. That makes me happier than anything else. Oh, I almost forgot. Our family has grown. It's Angel, the white cat sleeping comfortably on my lap. When I went to say goodbye to Angel, who often came to play in my yard before moving, he jumped onto my lap as usual and then stayed still like a statue. I was sad to part with Angel, so I brought him with me to my parents' house. Now he's close with my parents, and he's just as important to me as my son. But from now on, I want to watch my son grow up warmly with my parents and Angel. That's what I think about as I sit in the rocking chair on the porch, stroking Angel. You getting pregnant at your age? It's just revolting. Let's not even talk about your educational background. It's like you're the subject of a documentary or something. Who drops out these days? Do you really think my being a high school dropout and an older mom affects you as my brother's wife? Ava, you're shameless. You know that? Can you just leave before I have to call security? I'm sure you don't want to ruin your darling brother's wedding. Ava, the bride, bursts into laughter as if she's won the argument. My brother Daniel, witnessing her intimidating demeanor, signals me silently to leave with a smile. Fed up with both of them, I finally say, "Fine, just don't regret this later." What? You're such a sore loser, you old hag. Don't think you can take those words back later. My name is Sophia. I'm 38 years old. Currently, I'm 6 months pregnant with my first child. Today is the wedding of my only brother, Daniel. Eva, the new bride, has just thrown some unbelievable words my way and shoved me toward the door of the family waiting room. I did get married last year, at the age of 37, considered late by most standards. However, until then, I never had the time to focus on personal milestones like marriage or having a child. I have a brother, Angel, who's exactly 10 years younger than me. When he was born, our father was 42. Our mother was 35. During a time when societal bias against late pregnancies was much stronger. My mom always said, we were both only children, so we wanted to give our kid a sibling. I passed away from injuries sustained in the accident when I was 17, and my brother was just 7. Mom also underwent multiple surgeries, but eventually, 2 years later, she joined Dad. At the time of Dad's passing, I was a sophomore in an all-girls school with a ladder system. Financially, we were okay for a while, thanks to the insurance money, but my mom was hospitalized and couldn't take care of my brother. Even worse, family members, once warm and supportive, started eyeing the compensation money. One even told my bedridden mom, "You can't take care of your young kids. We'll become their guardians until they're adults." So, I sold our family home and moved to a new apartment, relying more on non-family members to help us through this crisis. Ironically, they proved more helpful than my own flesh and blood. Having moved, I was free from the clutches of money-hungry relatives and focused on taking care of the home and Daniel. Between cleaning, cooking, and attending to my still very needy brother, not to mention frequent hospital visits to see Mom, my schooling took a back seat and I eventually dropped out. Certainly, it's occasional I had help from my teacher, classmates, and best friends, but as months turned into years, the burden grew heavier on me. So, I decided to drop out of school during my sophomore year. My best friend Emma tried to talk me out of it, but I didn't want to leave things hanging. I decided to make my little brother Daniel my top priority, at least until he starts middle school. But to around that time, our mom, who had been struggling with treatment, finally passed away, joining Dad. But for the next 5 years, life revolved around Daniel. Taking Emma's advice not to isolate myself at home, I continued learning while Daniel was at school, enrolling in language courses and other online certifications. When Daniel moved on to middle school, I became a certified public accountant. I started working through a temp agency. I continued to aim higher in my career, and by the age of 25, I got a job at the headquarters of a well-known restaurant chain. There were people from all walks of life, and they inspired me to work harder than ever. Despite the detours, I found a place where I could be myself, and all my efforts felt worth it. Eventually, I got married.
On the other side, Daniel moved out for college and started living in a dorm. About 6 months ago, he texted me out of the blue. "Hey, I have someone I want you to meet, and we catch up."
Of course, I had no reason to say no. That weekend, we met at a restaurant Daniel had picked, where he introduced me to a tall and beautiful woman. Her name is Ava. She was a graduate from Wellesley College with excellent grades. But something about Ava didn't sit right with me, especially her tone and perspective. And for example, right after introductions, she bluntly said, "No offense, but how old are you?" "You look significantly older than Daniel." "I'm 38, a 10-year gap between us, so that might be noticeable," I replied.
"Oh, so you're almost 40 then. Wow, and you just got married. How old is your husband? Was it a marriage of convenience? I mean, if we get married and have kids, then they'd probably call you grandma rather than aunt, right?"
I was already suspicious of being pregnant and was planning to see a doctor next week, which made me even more uncomfortable. At Daniel, standing right next to us, didn't seem bothered at all. It looked like my brother, who had always been focused on studies and work, was completely smitten with Ava. He was blindly approving of everything she did. Just that night, when I asked, "Hey Daniel, you're dating Ava with the intention of marrying her, right?"
Yeah, that's the plan. Sophia's met her too, and I was thinking of visiting Ava's family to introduce myself next week.
Already. Didn't you say you've only been together for exactly 2 months? It's not necessarily a problem, but isn't it better to get to know each other a little more before making such a big move?
Is that so? Is there a problem? It's boring, that's boring. Oh, Sophia, but the bond between us doesn't depend on time. It's deep and solid, Daniel declared. I couldn't find the words to respond. Daniel officially proposed to Eva, and they were happily engaged. But then Daniel told me, look, Sophia, Ava's family has some opinions, so could you and your husband, kindly not attend the engagement party. What
do you mean by Eva's family's opinions?
Blurda and Ava, who seemed to have been eavesdropping, took the phone. I'd heard from Daniel that you're pregnant, Sophia.
Yes, but my morning sickness isn't bad, so attending the engagement ceremony should be...
But don't you think an old pregnant woman would ruin the celebration? Or at least she cut me off. You should know your place, pay for the engagement, and stay out of it. You really don't have common sense, do you?
Stunned. I cannot respond. And you rush in, Sophia, just transfer the money for the engagement, to my account, and don't cause a scene, alright?
Soon after, I received a reminder text from Daniel.
When are you sending the money for the engagement? Sophia?
Why should I pay for your engagement? Daniel, I raised you like a parent, but I am your sister, not your mom. Daniel explained that Ava's family owned several restaurants. Ava had grown up like a little princess, surrounded by other wealthy folks.
Actually, so, in time, Ava is surrounded by many acquaintances, friends, and relatives who are also celebrities, and she says I can't match Sophia's level. That's what they say.
He said I wasn't in their league and even hinted my lack of education was a problem for their marriage. If I convinced them, you should just wish me happiness and keep your mouth shut, he said. Except, I thought, if that's the case, consider this my final contribution, and transferred the requested $100,000.
He's on the wedding day. My husband and I visited the venue with mixed feelings. Eva greeted us with, "It's really gross that an old woman gets pregnant." And before I called security, but my husband started to say something, but I stopped him. Ava continued, "You two aren't even considered family. We should have told the staff to exclude you."
Ava laughed, and Daniel just smiled. No matter that it was a joyful occasion for my brother. I had no reason to put up with this level of insult. And we're fine. I'll leave since I'm clearly not wanted here. And while I'm at it, consider any future interaction with you all permanently canceled. No regrets, okay?
As I said this, Ava laughed and retorted, why would we regret it? You lost in your fantasies or something?
Before her laughter even faded, Ava's father rushed over.
Yeah, what are you doing raising your voice like this? People can hear you from the other side.
Oh, Dad, meet Daniel's embarrassingly uneducated incompetent sister-in-law. She had the nerve to try to attend the ceremony, so I just chased her away. So,
As Ava laughed and said this, her father looked at me, his eyes widening halfway.
Ava, do you know who this is? He runs the staffing agency that practically supplies all staff for my restaurants.
hospitality staff. What's that? You also...
Eva's father then explained that hospitality staff refers to temporary workers employed during busy periods in hotels and restaurants. It's that their responsibilities range from preparations to serving food and drinks at appropriate times and cleaning up afterwards. Especially for Ava's father's restaurants and Japanese cuisine establishments within hotels where banquets and receptions are held. My agency provides invaluable staff trained in both manners and language skills.
So what? I didn't know, okay?
My apologies. Miss Sophia? CEO. It seems there's been a little misunderstanding. So,
Misunderstanding. No, there's no misunderstanding. Eva calling me an uneducated old hag isn't a first. And you both agreed to not invite me to the engagement party, right? So you're just as judgmental as your daughter.
well, that's...
My husband, standing beside me, stepped forward and spoke.
What's the rest of the sentence? Regardless, we'll both be withdrawing our businesses from any involvement with your company.
The father's face turned ashen.
Mr. Alexander Theodoxio. You're Miss Sophia's husband?
Plus, my wife uses her maiden name, Business, so you probably didn't notice. And it's not something we go around announcing. Because an angered Avier, overhearing this, shouted,
Why are you humbling yourself before the husband of this old hag? Brad, we can always work with another company. Father explained that my husband owns the consulting firm he had approached. Ava was undeterred. Oh, what? There are plenty of consultants out there. Plus, you can cut ties with these idiots. His face.
As your daughter suggests, it seems like a win-win for both parties, to go our separate ways.
My husband took my hand, and we started walking away, leaving behind a dazed father, a confused Daniel, and a furious Ava. The wedding proceeded without a hitch. But afterwards, a heated argument erupted between father and daughter. All because of Ava's attitude towards us. As it turned out, the father, a restaurateur, had been facing severe financial strains. By Camp's Lake Tandy Tales, the main bank had introduced him to Alexander, intending to hire him as a consultant to turn things around. Upon investigation, the father's financials were far worse than initially thought.
So, it's a good thing we didn't take on potentially futile project, my husband later commented, and I wanna...
But the bank was furious, withdrawing support and freezing loans. Rumors spread, leading to other financial institutions and suppliers doing the same, plunging the father into bankruptcy. So, Ava's father set his sights on Daniel's apartment, aware that it was just a drop in the ocean. When I got married, I sold my family's apartment and settled the remaining insurance and compensation money from my parents. Daniel used his half as a down payment to buy a high-rise apartment. However, the apartment still had 30 years left on the mortgage, which would leave Daniel in considerable debt if sold. Thus, the relationship between Daniel, who resisted selling, and Eva, who pushed for it, rapidly deteriorated. In the end, it seems they agreed on a quick divorce, with Daniel paying some amount as a settlement. Daniel came into my office to tearfully explain the situation, but I was so disgusted that I asked him to leave immediately. Of course, he's also banned from my apartment, and I've blocked all means of contact. Right now, I'm busy preparing for the birth of my child.
Emma, Alexander's sister and a friend since my student days often visits and says my niece or nephew can't wait to meet the baby as she talks to my growing belly.
And from now on, I plan to work even harder to make my own family happy. Fix their relationship. Then a shocking truth was revealed. My name is Madison. I'm 31 years old and work as a nurse. The way I met my husband Nicholas, who is 2 years older than me, is like something out of a drama. Nurse meets inpatient. We got to know each other after I messed up his IV, embarrassing to admit as a nurse. I wish I could forget it, but hey, we're married now. Life is unpredictable. I work at a general hospital, which includes night shifts. When I come home after a night shift, my husband is on his way to work. We might not always cross paths, but for the most part, we were doing well as a couple. One day, we both had the day off and planned to go out. That's when my younger sister Abigail showed up unannounced. When we told her we were about to go out, she excitedly said, "Really, I was thinking of going shopping too. Let's go to this store," and just like that, she decided where we were going. My husband chuckled and said, "Well, it's fine. We hadn't decided where to go anyway." But we rarely get to go out together. She's your only sister and she misses you. It's cute, isn't it? At that, my sister started playfully hitting my husband on the arm, saying, "Oh my God, you're calling me cute." That's so sweet. My sister has always been like this. Good at buttering people up. Good at getting pampered. Even my parents were the same. Everybody always spoils her.
Going out. I was always told to be the mature older sister, compared and even made to hold back sometimes. Honestly, she's not my favorite person.
I thought getting married and moving out meant finally getting some distance, but no. She has a knack for showing up and making me sigh. Our outing ended up being all about where she wanted to go. She kept asking us to buy this and that. I said no, but my husband ended up paying for it all anyway. And so apparently, being an only child, he has a soft spot for the concept of a little sister. You're so kind. I'm so happy you're my brother-in-law, she said, wrapping her arm around my husband. My husband doesn't even try to shake her off. They walk together like a couple, and I follow behind them. It's the only way to describe how miserable I feel. After that, my sister started visiting more frequently. Having just graduated from college and failing to find a job, she's supposedly a homemaker. But it seems she doesn't actually do any housework, so she's just unemployed and hanging around the house. She's not even working part-time. and our parents are okay with this. Plus, with time on her hands, she started spending more than half the week at our place. I'm not thrilled about it, but since my husband is happy to have her, I can't exactly turn her away. 7 days. I told her it's inconvenient for her to come over so often. She broke down and said, "You're a terrible sister. Do you hate me?" Upon seeing this, my husband lashed out. "Hey, aren't you being too harsh on your sister? What a cold-hearted sibling you are." But despite her being so adorable, I am labeled the cold sister. Not very nice at all. Always the same story. Our parents dote on my sister and treat me poorly. It was the same when I said I wanted to go to nursing school. "We don't have the money," they hesitated. But when I said I would pay for it with money from my part-time job, guess what they said? "Use that money for your sister." That's what they told me. At that moment, I gave up expecting anything from my parents. I gave up on being loved by them. In the end, I went to nursing school without giving in, and they didn't help me at all. That's despite claiming to have no money, they paid my sister's college tuition. Apparently, they still give her an allowance every month. And now for our parents, the only beloved daughter is my sister. And I see the same trend in my husband. Everyone seems to think my sister is the virtuous one, and I'm the villain. It's an incredibly sad reality. And to add insult to injury, my husband's attitude towards me starts to change. He's become somewhat colder. You can't even handle basic chores, and you call yourself a housewife? But you're completely useless. You know your current lifestyle is all thanks to me, right? Show some gratitude. You've got plenty of clothes. Stop wasting money when you earn so little. If only you were more beautiful. What bad luck I have being stuck with a charmless wife like you. The verbal abuse just kept getting worse, and his spending grew increasingly reckless. But when confronted, he'd lash out. And then I saw my sister smirking as she watched us fight. That's when I realized my husband and my sister were having an affair. I hadn't seen it happen, but I could feel it in the air. Call it a woman's intuition, if you will. My sister being overly touchy and needy with my husband, and him responding with a sloppy grin. Initially, I cried almost every night, but slowly my sadness turned to rage. Wondering what to do about this, an incident occurred one day. My sister was rushed to the hospital where I work, seeing her on a stretcher. I was shocked. Even more when I heard her husband was with her. Wait, husband? When did my sister get married? Was I the only one not in the know? No way, that can't be. While I was still confused, a man stepped out of the ambulance. Yes, it was my husband. Definitely mine. It seemed to have turned slightly pale.
What exactly are you?
It might not matter to Mom and Dad. Person, the child is all that goes after all.
Oh.
This right here is about the man Abigail is dating. I said, showing them a photograph. It featured my sister arm in arm with a man. It wasn't my ex-husband.
Huh. Fall, what a...
I'm my bewildered ex-husband and parents. My sister lost for words. The moment of revenge.
Surprise! Style on my sister's belly. Is this man?
I grinned and declared loudly. What? What's going on? Abigail, what is this about? I pressed on against the stunned trio.
The truth is, Abigail's been dating this man. Said her child is unmistakably his. Weren't you two using contraception?
Oh yes, but contraception isn't absolute.
True, nothing is absolute, but the timing doesn't add up based on, what I've heard. That's not absolute either, but the timeline for her relationship with this man aligns perfectly with her, though chances are when I sought proof of my husband and sister's affair, I stumbled upon an unexpected revelation.
Stop making stuff up. I don't know this man, and,
That's right. Madison, you can't ruin a relationship with lies?
Oh, really? Oh, is this picture photoshopped?
I spread out a couple of pictures on the table, one showing my sister checking into a hotel with a man and another showing them leaving. Then I spread out a slew of lovey-dovey pictures that obviously couldn't have been edited.
Wow, look at you two, all cozy.
what are you doing? Duly clean this up. Threw them away.
Don't worry. And digital copies?
Or sorry, kidding me?
My sister is panicking. This is getting fun.
The list of all things that I watched well, I should let you mention that this relationship between my sister and this man dates back a few years since Abigail was in college.
That long ago. Abigail, you said you didn't have a boyfriend.
I don't.
Oh, can't really call him a boyfriend, can we? Because, he's a married man.
Oh, he's what?
My ex-husband's voice cracked. What's there to be surprised about? You were married too. Seems like my sister has a thing for married men.
Abigail, you were serious about him, weren't you?
You wanted to have his child, didn't you?
My sister was silenced by my questions. I looked at my ex-husband and pointed sharply at him.
Oh, you're just a convenient option.
My ex-husband's eyes widened.
Pretty impressive considering you'd marry and raise a child that isn't yours. Well, it's not the child's fault, so you better take good care of them.
Wait, if that's true.
If what's true?
Let's start over.
I was caught off guard by a sudden statement. What's he talking about?
Start over.
Guess if Abigail's child isn't mine, then I'll break up with her. Why should I raise someone else's child? So why would you want to start over with me? You still love me, right? So I can put up with your quirks if I, to continue to provide for me as you have, so...
Dang. I couldn't take it anymore and slammed the table. The photos and documents flew everywhere. I glared at my ex-husband.
You gotta be kidding me.
Ugh.
Be saying I'm so stupid that I'd get back with a man who cheated on me with my sister. Blabia. I think of you as less than trash. Even if you offer me $1 billion, I'd say no. It's not a $1 billion. I'd say no.
Do you really?
The sleazy man who hits on his wife's sister, and a sleazy one who would let him raise another man's child. Hope you two are a match made in heaven. Just stay out of my life. And that goes for you too. Mom and Dad, I'll find happiness without any of you.
I left my family home after dropping those words.
Hey, wait up.
My ex-husband desperately tried to catch up to me. He reached out his hand to me, but it was intercepted by someone else.
Eines das Mann ist David. I won't allow anyone to harm Madison.
It was the doctor who had treated my sister before David. He'd saved me that day from my ex-husband's blow. We became close while I consulted him about various issues. David, who also experienced divorce due to his wife's infidelity, confessed his feelings for me. I was shocked. I asked him to wait until the divorce was finalized. He respected my wish. He'd been waiting outside today, concerned about the meeting.
I'll call the police if you try anything. And if you cross the line, I'll see you right away.
But, Madison, please wait. I was wrong and so wrong.
I grinned at my weeping ex-husband.
Thanks to you and my sister, Adjir, I met him. Thank you. I'm going to be happy with him.
My ex-husband slumped as he watched me hug David. After that, we DNA tested my sister's child after its birth. As suspected, the child was not my ex-husband's. My sister and ex-husband ended up divorcing. My sister had to pay damages for her affair once her lover's wife found out. She's now reluctantly working night shifts. As for my parents, they dote on their grandchild, believing blood is thicker than water. It seems their love has shifted from my sister to her child, and my sister doesn't like it. I'm being neglected, but I don't care. Her child is likely to follow in her footsteps. I wonder what my aging parents will do then. Not my problem. His word got around at my ex-husband's workplace about his affairs and quick divorce, so now he's ostracized. He got uncomfortable and quit his job. Then he hopped from job to job, his mental state deteriorating, and eventually became unemployed. Nobody knows what he's up to now. A mutual friend told me this, but honestly, I couldn't care less. He brought this upon himself. Oh yeah, right. As for me, my relationship with David is going well. We are cautious about moving forward because we both have been cheated on, but his sincerity has eased my worries. I'm pretty sure the day I become Mrs. Johnson isn't far off. He continued words and left the person who made him. I say that was... now. Mommy, go over there. That's the first time 4-year-old Ryan said those words to Layla was when I got into a fight with her. That's the first time 4-year-old Ryan said those words to Layla was when I got into a fight with her. I couldn't believe my son would say something like that to his mother. When I asked Ryan why, I was shocked by what I heard. My name is Oliver and I'm 30 years old. I work hard every day for a well-known company to support my family. My family consists of my loving wife, Layla, and our 4-year-old son, Ryan. Layla is a stay-at-home mom, juggling housework and childcare every day. Thanks to her, I can focus on my job, and I'm truly grateful for that. As on weekends, we all go out together, maybe to the local park or shopping. I feel blessed to watch Ryan grow up alongside Layla. We've even managed to avoid the common mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts. My mom and Layla get along like best friends. They go to cafes together whenever they can, and my mom often helps take care of Ryan. Annie is buying Ryan some clothes next time. Great! I'll thank Mom for that. Life was good for us, free from any family disputes. But lately, something seemed off with Layla. Her usually bright expression seemed clouded. Kate concerned. I decided to check in with her. Hey Layla, are you feeling okay these days?
Yeah. I think so. Why?
Really? You just seem more down than usual.
I'm fine, really. Sorry to worry you.
All right, if you say so. I couldn't press her any further as she forced a smile and insisted she was fine. But after years together, I knew something was up. Layla is hiding something. Even if something happened, I didn't want to ask any more persistently. I decided to keep an eye on things. Then one day, Layla approached me awkwardly when I got home from work.
Oliver, can you talk tonight after Ryan goes to bed?
Sure, what's going on?
I think I've reached my limit being alone with Ryan.
What? Layla had never complained about childcare before. So for her to look so distressed about Ryan, I couldn't hide my surprise. What do you mean you've reached your limit? What happened?
Ryan's language has been, really inappropriate lately.
Inappropriate language.
Let's talk more tonight.
Layla returned to making dinner, and the conversation was paused. Usually, this would be a time for cheerful conversation while preparing dinner with Ryan. After Ryan had gone to bed, I brought up the topic again. So, what were you saying earlier? Is it hard being with him during the day?
It's not that I don't like it. Said I've reached my limit. Every time Ryan uses bad language, I feel like crying. Oh, maybe we should change his preschool.
Bad language? He's only 4. He probably doesn't even understand what he's saying. Isn't he just repeating words he's learned at preschool?
At this point, Layla's eyes filled with tears and she raised her voice, holding back sobs. I'm sorry, Mom, don't say that. Oliver, this is after us. Cause you're not home, so you don't know. Don't make assumptions out here yourself.
I still don't say that. Sis, Oliver, you're not home, so you don't know.
But changing his preschool seems a bit extreme, don't you think?
Listen, who around Ryan is saying things like, I hate you, or I don't love you? He must have picked it up at preschool.
Oh, we can't be sure. Oh, maybe you got it from a cartoon or something?
You might not know this, but Ryan isn't interested in cartoons. I thought maybe a picture book, but what kind of children's book uses such alarming language?
Being Layla so desperate was new to me, but changing preschools still seemed like an overreaction. With that in mind, I tried to comfort her. I get that you're worried, Layla, but maybe we can wait and see a bit longer.
Are you serious?
Brian probably doesn't even understand what he's saying.
That's exactly the problem. I don't think... What if he starts using that language with his friends or adults?
Well, that's...
I don't want Ryan to become that, kind of child. You don't want that either, do you? Oliver?
Just then, the living room door opened. There stood Ryan, looking sleepy.
Ryan.
Excited to ask mommy. Daddy, what's going on? I'm not sleepy yet.
Besides, we're going upside, we're gonna bed soon too. Ryan. Outside, do we wake you?
Don't make such scary faces. Mommy and Daddy should be friends. So don't worry. Ryan, everything's fine, so,
At hand, as I was about to take the drowsy Ryan back to his room, he hurled unbelievable words at Layla. Ryan, what did you say?
Mommy, no.
Hey, Ryan. Ignoring me? Ryan continued to berate Layla. Oh, go away. All unbelievable words.
And do you hate Mommy?
Layla's voice trembled as she asked.
And then Ryan said, I don't love you.
So this is what Layla was talking about. As much as I didn't want to believe it, I had heard Ryan's harsh words with my own ears.
Ryan, you can't say things like that. Say this, apologize to my...
Because Mommy's making a scary face. That doesn't make it okay. All there are things you can and can't say. I didn't do anything wrong.
Brian.
I turned around and saw Layla holding back sobs.
I'm sorry. Lola. I never thought it would come to this. See, you heard it too. Do you still think we should wait and see?
Well, I can't take it anymore. I can't keep being told such things by Ryan. Layla grabbed a large bag, threw in her wallet and phone, and left the house. I wanted to go after her, but I couldn't leave Ryan alone. Astrid reluctantly.
Brian, why the long face? So no one should be crying. It's Daddy.
But the Mommy's gone.
Because you told Mommy I hate you, and go away, she left. Oh, this is Mommy's home too, you know? You can't say things like that, okay?
Brian burst into tears, and honestly, I was lost, as I stood there speechless. Ryan sobbed out.
I just want to make Mommy laugh, right? And...
No one would laugh at hearing I hate you, or go away. Those are helpful words.
That's not true.
Doing.
Wanna say Mommy now and tell me I hate you. She's happy.
The name that came out of Ryan's mouth hit me like a blunt object. It was my own mom. Mom usually doesn't use language like that, and she gets along well with Layla. She's always been supportive and often takes care of Ryan. On the other hand, there's no way Ryan, my and Layla's son, would lie about this. The moment I realized that, anger surged within me. Why? Why would she do something that could ruin my family? She and Layla supposed to be getting along. I won't let her ruin our family relationships. The next day, I called my parents home and explained the situation to Dad.
Obisado, that's what happened. Ella left because Ryan was using abusive language. Do you know anything about Mom's involvement?
Let me think.
After pondering for a moment, Dad suddenly exclaimed,
Aha, I remember.
According to Dad, when Layla was sick, they had asked Mom to pick up Ryan from preschool. Meditation, Dad overheard their cheerful voices and decided to eavesdrop.
He heard Ryan saying, Mommy, no. Pirate, I hate you.
And Mom laughing loudly saying, haha, you're the best. Say SDPC instant. Say our mommy go away next.
Mommy, go away.
Fantastic. Well done. Next, say Omi, I don't love you.
I don't love you. I will not say I.
Good boy. This will surely cheer Mommy up. Unable to ignore it, Ed rushed into the room to stop Mom.
What are you teaching the kid?
Mom casually replied, "Oh, what's the big deal? We're just playing." At the same time, Ed didn't press the issue further. I see. Understanding the situation, I thanked Dad and immediately called Layla.
Hi.
She answered in a weak voice, and I spoke gently.
Layla, I'm sorry for saying we should wait and see yesterday. You were right. Ryan learned those terrible words from someone.
So I'm glad you understand.
Portion of this understand is cleared up. You come home now.
I can't handle this. I'm really shocked.
It's not what you think.
Out.
Fine, didn't want you leave. We just wanted to make you smile.
Smile? How could I smile when he says things like that?
I know, remember the day we had that argument and we were both upset? But I wanted to see you smile again. That's the real story.
What are you talking about?
Be confused. Layla listened as I told her the truth.
It was my mom. My mom taught Ryan those words, so...
That can't be true. Annie is so kind.
I thought the same. That mom would never do something like that. But when I checked with Dad, he said he might have witnessed something similar.
After hearing the whole truth, Layla sighed over the phone. I was furious at my mom for hurting Lola, the woman I love.
Lola, I'm really sorry. Our mom caused you so much pain.
It's not your fault. Other, don't I? But if it's true, I can't forgive Annie.
I get it. I'll go talk to my mom tomorrow. What will you do?
In response, Layla firmly answered. Layla answered firmly.
I'm coming with you. I need to know if it's really Annie.
Alright, well, Stein, after I drop Brian off at preschool tomorrow, I'll come pick you up. Text me the address where you're staying.
Okay.
The next day, when Layla and I visited my parents' house, Mom looked deliberately concerned. Oliver, what brings you here so suddenly? And Layla, you too? We have something important to discuss. Did something happen to Ryan? Yes, about that. We have a question for you. Nan, caught off guard. Mom looked puzzled as I pressed her. Did you teach Ryan to say mommy? I hate you and go away? What are you talking about? I would never say. Brian said those words to Layla. When we asked him who taught him, he said it was you. I don't know what you're talking about, but I said I don't know. As Mom stubbornly refused to admit it, I completely changed. Dad spoke up. You did teach him those words, didn't you? That when you were looking after him. No, I didn't. I remember clearly. I tried to convince myself I'd heard wrong, but after hearing Oliver's story, I knew I couldn't let it go. You too? Why are you making me out to be the bad guy? She's the one at fault. Mom pointed at Layla, glaring at her. Layla responded firmly.
Sight, if I've done something to offend you, I apologize. So, Buster, please stop teaching Ryan those words.
That's it. I've always hated your goody two-shoes act.
I didn't think so.
Not just Lalea, but Dad and I were also stunned by Mom's sudden change. In the silence that followed, Mom continued to shout,
I've hated you from the start. I was just playing the part of a good mother-in-law.
But so close.
That's what you thought. Being around you always made me angry. You're the devil who stole my precious Oliver. I was so angry. I used Ryan to corner you.
That can't be true.
Hey, just imagining the look on your face when your own son says something like that to you. It was so satisfying. You deserve this punishment for stealing Oliver from me. You bitch!
At that moment, I felt my anger reach its peak. I'll never forgive her for hurting my precious Layla.
Oh, enough is enough.
Just as I was about to yell at Mom,
Are you kidding me, you old witch?
Atex, the one who raised her voice, was none other than Layla.
Ichenta, why you? Dile.
Layla, looking furious, confronted Mom.
Uninvolved, little Ryan. He's gonna grow up and learn from various experiences, and he won't turn out well with someone like you around.
I had never seen this side of her before. Layla continued to plead with Mom, her hair disheveled and tears in her eyes.
I'll never let you see Ryan again. I don't care what you think of me, but involving Ryan is unforgivable. Stay away from him, you awful old witch.
With that, Ingrid quickly left my parents' house. Ed told me to go after her, snapping me back to reality. I followed Layla and comforted her as we headed home together. After we left, Atinik apparently scolded Mom and urged her to apologize to Layla. But Mom kept insisting it was all Layla's fault. Effed up. I'd brought up divorce and Mom suddenly panicked. But it was too late.
I never thought you were this kind of person. You said leaving her.
I can't even imagine how Mom will manage from now on. But it's not my concern anymore. Honestly, I just want them to do whatever they want, no matter what kind of life they have. Layla and I haven't seen Mom since, and we don't want to. Layla has completely rejected her, and for Ryan's sake, it's better that we never see her again. As for Ryan, as time passed, he stopped using those terrible words. At hand perforce, when Layla is down, he finds other ways to cheer her up.
Does Mom as well?
Ryan.
I love you. Mommy.
Hey, Mommy loves you too. Thank you. Blah, okay.
Finally, our peaceful daily life has returned. That's now on. I want to live happily ever after, protecting the smiles of my beloved Layla and Ryan. My name is Harper, a 42-year-old housewife working part-time. My husband, Keith, is 48 and works for a company. We have an 18-year-old daughter, Sophia, who is a high school student. Though we have been married for nearly 20 years, there has been a persistent tense atmosphere for quite a while. Back when Sophia was little, the three of us used to go out and play together a lot. However, since Sophia became a high school student, Keith started going out by himself more frequently. He has completely stopped getting involved in Sophia's school events or club activities. I have to drive Sophia, who's part of the badminton club, to tournaments and practice matches far away. But no matter how much I ask Keith, he always brushes me off, saying I'm busy with work. Looking after the child is the mother's job, isn't it? Sophia, too, is astonished at her father's behavior. Other kids' fathers are enthusiastically coming to support, but our dad doesn't seem to care. It seems that Sophia isn't particularly fond of Keith, who never helps out with child rearing. He barely helps out with housework, but he always has complaints. Even when my part-time job gets busy and I come home late. Keith never prepares dinner. What time do you think it is? I'm starving here. I work too, you know. You could at least prepare dinner. At this way, we often end up arguing. Just least lately, Sophia has been helping with dinner preparations, which has been a great relief. The initial reason I started working part-time was because Keith asked me to. I had planned to start working once Sophia grew up to a certain extent. But Keith kept buying unnecessary things, so I started working again when Sophia was 1. Keith loves cars and is constantly buying new ones. He should buy a car within his earning capacity, but he can't do that. He's not high income, but he keeps buying expensive cars. Adding to that, Keith, who likes to show off, seems to often pay for his co-workers when they go drinking. They treated everyone again today. He comes home drunk and talks about it with a smug face. Recently, there seem to be fewer drinking parties, so he seems to not be treating others as much. Still, he's always complaining about not having enough money. He works for a company that does not pay well, and he spends money without thinking. Giggling. I wanted to save money for Sophia's education and for buying our own house. Now, saving money is out of the question, and we are barely getting by day to day. Keith's salary disappears with monthly rent, food expenses, and educational expenses. Most of my part-time income is used for the payments on the luxury car that Keith bought. Or a large minivan, a hybrid car which is too big for a 3-person family. He decided to buy it without considering Sophia's or my opinion. But before this minivan, we had a gas-guzzling giant SUV. I got angry several times because of the car's poor fuel efficiency. Why do you, who never go to the mountains or the sea, need to buy such a car?
Why do you, who never go to mountains or the sea, need to buy such a car with such large tires?
I bought it because it's trendy now. Okay, even in heavy snow.
We live in an area where it only snows about once every 5 years, so there was never a chance to use it in snowy conditions.
He bought the current minivan. He said this time it's a hybrid, so the fuel efficiency is good. Also, a lot of people can ride in a minivan.
When Sophia was in junior high school, many of the parents of the badminton club members drove minivans. Sophia and I had a conversation about it.
Indeed, a minivan can accommodate many people and even allow for changing clothes. It's nice.
Our car is large, but the interior's cramped, isn't it?
Perhaps my husband casually checks in on my conversation with our daughter, Sophia. And then there's my husband, who bought a sports car before the SUV.
Although it was a childhood dream of mine. Child is every man's fantasy.
And you wait until Sophia grows up. This car's child seat is a pain.
Albert says, a car can only drive now. We don't use the child seat every day, so it's okay.
You might not mind since you won't be transporting Sophia, but it's hard for me.
The two-door car was difficult to use, and of course, the fuel economy was terrible. Sophia was still at an age where she needed a child seat or a baby seat, and getting in and out was difficult. If only my husband would consult me, but he decides on his own. He buys on impulse without thinking about the payments. I don't understand why he buys things he can't afford on his salary. In the end, I had to pay the loan with the money I earned from my part-time job. Every time, my hours at the part-time job get longer. When we bought the current minivan, my husband and I had a quarrel.
Next time we buy a car, consult us too. You can't decide on your own.
I should be the one to decide. I'm the one who drives it the most.
You can decide, but at least let me know what kind of car it will be. That's all I ask.
Decide if I console you first. Okay, I understand. So, next time we can decide if I consult with you first.
At my husband's words, I started feeling anxious.
You're not thinking of buying the next car already, are you? Do you?
I don't know. And,
That's it, dearie. The word I don't know seemed unnatural.
I'm paying almost all of the loan for the car you're driving with my part-time job earnings, so it says I can't pay any more than this.
I'm also paying for the down payment.
Plus my husband towards looking dissatisfied. It's not a down payment, it's the money from trading in the old car. Then it's the same as what I paid.
It could be.
My husband was overruled by me. About a month later, my husband brought up the topic, looking guilty.
Actually, I bought a new car.
I was so stunned that I didn't even feel angry.
This time, it's an electric vehicle, so we don't need gasoline. With the current high gasoline prices, it's perfect.
Electricity is expensive too. We don't have solar power, so are there any advantages to electric cars?
Booster in Ambidol doesn't emit carbon dioxide, so it's good for the environment.
I can't tell if he's just easily swayed by trends, or if he's just doing what the car dealer tells him. It's too much. How much did you pay for it?
He says now is a loan of $750 per month. I says, I need your part-time job earnings again.
If it's $750 a month, that's all of my part-time earnings. Do I have to work for your car?
He'll be driving it too.
Now that Sophia's club activities are over, I won't be using it. Now that our daughter, a high school senior, has retired from her club activities, she won't need the car anymore. I wanted to save my part-time earnings for her college education, but now my plan has been completely derailed.
Gain money for Sophia's college education too. Is it okay to buy such an expensive car? Or are you okay?
He asks me back. Sure enough, due to the recent incident, I started to harbor doubts towards my husband. Am I really okay living with this man? I'm filled with uncertainty. He doesn't consider Sophia's college expenses or our retirement funds at all. I want to discuss it with someone, but my parents are no longer around. I don't want to worry Sophia, so I can't talk to her. At that moment, I remember a senior from work. He got divorced a few years ago and is now single-handedly raising 2 children. Despite being my junior by a couple of years, they perform better than other employees. I'm not considering a divorce yet, but I want to consult him. Fetch the brands the next day during lunch. I had him listen to my story. After hearing my situation, the senior said I had small children and my wife didn't work, so I was able to make the decision quickly. I feel a bit better after talking, but honestly, I'm still unsure. Do you think you could live with Sophia just on your part-time pay? That's impossible. I can't make ends meet unless I'm a full-time employee. I thought so. We both fell silent. However, as I told my senior, I felt much better after just consulting. Right from then on, we talked about various things, considering my future life. After a while, my husband's new car was delivered.
Awesome as well, the new car is really great.
Yeah.
Why are you angry? Being happy. Or the new car is here.
Good for you.
You're no fun? Fine, I'll celebrate myself.
Saying that, my husband started drinking beer.
You're taking it easy, aren't you?
Hey, whatever you like.
He seemed unusually pleased, probably from the joy. The next day, I had to work overtime and came home late. Sophia had prepared dinner, which was a great help. When I came home, my husband was again happily drinking beer.
You working late? Good job. That's Jay.
I felt irritated at my husband, who was meddling with me.
I have to work hard for your new car, don't I?
Feeling annoyed, I made a sarcastic remark.
Thanks for earning the extra money. If it's so bothersome, why don't you just stop the payments?
I was angry that he'd say such a thing when I was working late, but I held back from complaining to my husband and decided to really stop the payments. Etchers, the next day, I decided to withdraw all the money from the account used for the car loan, and this means the next payment won't go through. I was looking forward to seeing what kind of face my husband would make. I managed to withdraw the money in time before the next due date, and a reminder notice arrived the next month. I hid the letter so my husband wouldn't find it. Of course, the reminder came again the following month, and the month after, but I was able to hide it successfully each time. Just around the 4th month after stopping the payments, I received a different document. It was sent by certified mail, and I thought this was the final reminder.
When my husband came home, I threw the packet with the document in it at him saying some important document arrived for you.
In a panic, Keith unwrapped the package shouting, "What the hell? You haven't been making car payments for 3 months."
And it seemed the letter stated that the car was to be repossessed due to repeated failure to respond to payment reminders. He would now have to give up his beloved car.
But you were the one who said stop the payments.
Well, that was just something I said in the heat of the moment where I was drunk. Oh, who would really stop payments?
7 times. I was so annoyed because he would tell me Thanks for earning some pocket money while I was working so hard.
After becoming more defiant, he started to say even worse things.
You always complained. Every time I bought a car, I should be able to buy a car if I want to.
I didn't complain about you buying a car. You can buy one, but you should pay for it yourself.
Struck by my blow, Keith was at a loss for words.
But we're gonna need money for Sophia's education soon. It's about the future.
I was shaking as he listened to me, and finally, he snapped.
If you can't listen to me, get out. This and ever getting a divorce.
Hearing the word divorce made even me falter.
Okay, I'll leave. Let Sophia decide what she wants to do.
Before I finished speaking, Sophia emerged from her room.
I'm obviously going with Mom. It's too much trouble to stay with a father who doesn't do anything.
She had heard our argument and seemed to understand what was happening. Sophia, who had already prepared her luggage, surprised me.
Well, I'll be leaving then. I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later.
I grabbed only the essentials and left the house.
Hey, where you go?
Keith's voice suddenly took on a sad tone.
Turning back, I said we'll probably discuss the divorce process later. I don't need alimony, but you have to pay child support.
We left the house, leaving Keith with his tearful face.
Mom, you were so cool. Just as expected. But what are we going to do now?
Don't worry. I had prepared for this, thinking it might happen. I had expected this to happen ever since Harper told me to stop paying the car loan. Also, I had about $3,000 from not paying the car loan payment for 4 months. I stayed in a motel for about 3 days, but I had already arranged for an apartment. We were able to move to the apartment on the 4th day after leaving the house.
I'm sorry for making you live in a place like a motel.
I wouldn't want to live there forever, but it was actually fun because we already had a place to move to.
Sophia said cheerfully, which relieved me a little.
It's gonna be just the two of us from now on, but I'll do my best.
I'll help with everything too. Let's do our best together.
We had to go back to our old house to get the rest of our stuff. We also had to finalize the divorce. I contacted Keith before returning to the old house. I asked a lawyer, who was recommended by a senior at work, to accompany us because I was afraid that Keith might become violent if it was just Sophia and me. The lawyer was an expert in divorce cases and had helped the senior during his divorce. It was expensive, but we could afford it.
We've also asked the lawyer to come.
Even the appearance of the lawyer surprised Keith, who said you're really okay with getting a divorce. I won't forgive you if you come back and apologize later.
He glared at me as he threatened me. I thought that this must be his true nature.
It's okay. I won't say such things.
As well time, even if you working part-time leave this place, you won't be able to make a living?
You don't have to worry about me. Just sign the divorce papers, quickly.
Hey, I'll see you. I'll sign it. Just shut up.
I will take full child support, considering your income.
Looking at the child support calculation,
why the hell do I have to pay child support? I won't pay a single penny to a daughter who wants to leave home.
Being told this, I felt grateful for having a lawyer. The lawyer convinced my husband that child support is not paid to me, but given to our daughter as a duty of a father. But there's still a chance that my husband won't pay the child support. Therefore, arrangements were made to deduct it from his salary if he doesn't pay.
Up, you're just a part-timer, but you've got a lawyer. How prestigious. Where did you get that money?
I forgot to tell you. I was made a full-time employee. I'm making about double my old salary, so don't worry.
Keith seemed speechless. But honestly, becoming a full-time employee gave me the courage to finally get a divorce. And as a full-time employee, I could also get a housing allowance, so I could afford to rent an apartment. To advice from my senior colleague, I had been looking for an apartment I could move into immediately. As the decision to bring a lawyer to the discussions was also advice from my senior. And sure enough, the child support from my husband stopped coming in almost immediately. It was good to have a lawyer come with me and set up the procedure to deduct it from his salary. Despite all the chaos, Sophia was able to get into her first choice university. I have to work even harder for her tuition. Working for a car loan that I don't even use is different. This has a sense of purpose. But from now on, for Sophia's sake, I plan to live happily together. Wait, you're going to sleep in there? It was supposed to be house sitting with my niece at my elder brother's house while he and his wife were on a trip. As we were joyfully discussing our plans for the following day, my niece reached for the closet door, signaling her intent to go to bed. She slid into the closet without a moment's hesitation, leaving me surprised. The chewy pretty says in fixie prints. When I rushed to grab her arm, she looked up at me with a puzzled expression. I'm a 24-year-old housewife named Melissa, and I have a brother who is 5 years older than me. We lost our parents early in life, and having always gotten along, we continued to support each other. That didn't change even after we each got married, and we still maintain close family ties. My in-laws are great, but they live in Alaska, a plane ride away, so we can't rely on them easily. My brother, Sam, and his wife had a shotgun wedding. After clashing with her parents, she's been estranged ever since. Just with no nearby relatives to rely on, our relationship has been one of mutual support without reserve. It was only strengthened when Sam and his wife had a daughter, and 4 years later, a girl was born to my family as well. At times, the daughters, who lived in the same city, grew up close, almost like real sisters. As the years went by, and my niece Sarah was about to turn 10, Sam told me about his plans for a 10th wedding anniversary trip. If it's okay with you, Melissa, could you look after Sarah while we're away? It's just a short overnight trip nearby, but we thought it'd be nice to spend some time alone. I was only too happy to oblige. When we discussed dates, and when I asked when I should pick Sarah up, he shook his head as if I didn't understand. It seemed that he wanted me to stay over at his house with Sarah, concerned about leaving the house empty for security reasons. I teased him about being overly worried, but finally gave in. I decided to stay over alone, leaving my daughter, who still has a little anxiety about sleepovers with my husband. The day of their anniversary trip came as planned, and I went to stay at Sam's house. I held Sarah's hand as we waved goodbyes to her parents. She looked a bit uneasy watching their backs. But our house-sitting adventure was about to begin. I originally planned to bring my daughter over and have my husband pick her up at bedtime, but Sarah adamantly refused, so I gave up. I know she enjoys playing with my daughter, and although she won't tell me why she doesn't want her here today, there must be some reason. So to cheer up a disappointed Sarah, I promised to take her to my house to play after breakfast the next day, which made her eyes light up. Sarah usually tailors her play with my daughter, so I brought some slightly complex games and puzzles that adults could enjoy as well. As I spread them out, I asked her what she wanted to play with. We spent our time playing games and cooking dinner together. But throughout, Sarah stayed close to me, constantly glancing around nervously. At first, I thought she might be lonely without her parents or still nervous, but her behavior didn't change even after a few hours. So I asked her if something was bothering her. But no matter how many times I asked, she said, "No, it's nothing," and she didn't tell me what was on her mind. Sarah's behavior seemed like she was on guard against something invisible. It was only when it was time for me to go to bed did I finally understand what that meant. Sarah changed into her pajamas, opened the door of the closet with a smile, and said she was going to sleep early today and leave for my house in the morning. In the closet, there was a bed. I couldn't figure out when it had been prepared, as I was trying to grasp the situation. Sarah quickly laid down on the bed and said goodnight while trying to close the door. "Hold on. Sarah, are you going to sleep in there?" I asked, my voice raising with surprise. But to which Sarah answered with a serious face.
Yes, but it's okay. I'll leave it open just a little. If I hear anything, I'll wake up right away.
Hiding my confusion, I invited Sarah to sleep with me. After some hesitation, Sarah finally agreed and joined me in my bed. She said that she wanted to leave the bed in the closet as a hiding place. I didn't understand why, but I told her it was absolutely fine. As cheerfully as possible, I asked her why she needed a hiding place. After making me promise not to laugh, she whispered, "The monster will come." Just hearing that might make you think she was still a sweet, innocent girl, but the story that followed was enough to make me believe in the existence of this monster. Sarah was shaking, clutching onto my arm.
The monster is really scary and clever. It only comes on the days when Daddy isn't home. If the monster comes, Mommy has to fight it off, and I mustn't leave the closet until she does. Mommy always cries while she's fighting. I once tried to help her, but I got so scared when the monster started banging on the closet door.
I hugged the trembling Sarah and sighed deeply in my heart. Probably this monster does exist, and it's not some trick to get a child to bed. But discovering my brother's wife's affair in such an unexpected way made me feel lost. It suspected this monster was my sister-in-law's lover, it wouldn't come to this house while she wasn't around. However, Sarah believes that the monster comes on the days when Daddy isn't home. Today, while my brother is away, the evidence is that she stayed close to me all day, guarding the windows and entrance. Considering my kind-hearted niece Sarah and my brother who trusts his wife. I felt a surge of anger towards my sister-in-law. But more than that, I wanted to reassure Sarah right now. I held her hand and smiled at her. It's okay. Auntie's here today. You said the monster is clever, right? Then it'll be surprised to see a stranger and won't come into the house. And your mommy, who is always targeted by the monster, is with Daddy today. So the monster can't get close to her. Dick and Artie stole. Sarah, who does not know the true identity of the monster, keeps her face clouded with anxiety. The more time passes, the more she begins to fear that the monster will attack soon. She suggested we hide in the closet together, so I tried to calm her down by encouraging her to share anything that worries her about the monster. I thought she would eventually get sleepy as I take away her fears one by one. However, when I heard more from Sarah, I knew I couldn't just sit back. Instead of putting her to bed, I immediately took her out of the house without changing her clothes. I rushed home in my own car and explained the situation to my husband and arranged for him and his friends to stay overnight at Sam's house. To around 10 p.m. on the day that my husband and his friends went on their way. I received a phone call from Sam asking about Sarah. Has Sarah already gone to bed? You shouldn't forget about your husband and daughter once in a while and have a good sleep. Make sure you lock up the house. Good night. After asking about Sarah, he told me to lock the door before I go to bed. He strongly warned me not to leave the house, and it took all my strength not to let my voice tremble. After ending the call, I looked at Sarah, who was sleeping peacefully with my daughter, and vowed to drive out the monster. The next morning, my husband returned from my brother's house. Trembled with fear and anger at the sight of my husband telling me about the events of the previous night. I was relieved that my judgment the day before had been correct. My family spent the rest of the day at home with Sarah, waiting for my brother and his wife to come pick her up. Upon seeing me, my brother sternly questioned why Sarah and I had left the house at night. Why didn't you sleep at our house? I asked you many times not to leave the house, didn't I? You said you understood, but what were you thinking when you just went home on your own? Thank you. The protest from him, accusing me of breaking my promise, made me feel uncomfortable. I coldly asked him why he, being on a trip, knew that we were not at home. But then he replied, well, avoiding eye contact. Well, we gave Sarah a smartphone with a GPS function. If that was true, he wouldn't have insisted so much on not leaving the house during the phone call the night before. If he had checked the GPS, he would have easily known that we were not at his house. Suppressing my urge to confront Sam immediately, I continued the conversation quietly so as not to be heard by the kids in the other room. By the way, 2 unknown men came to your house late last night. Who are they? Why would they come to a house that's supposed to be occupied only by Sarah and me in the middle of the night? suspicious individuals. I'm glad you're safe. His voice was trembling, but it was not from the fear of the suspicious individuals or the belief that his daughter was safe. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully, and his gaze was darting around. Hey, about those guys. I pressed my brother, who was not giving clear answers about who those men might be. But my voice was cut off by my brother's wife. Kate, whether she was worried about us talking any further, she began calling Sarah forcefully and said they were going home. This when Sarah, who had been playing in another room, heard her mother's voice, she came out. Kate pulled her hand away with obvious strength. Then Sam suddenly changed his attitude and said, I don't forgive you for what happened, but I'm leaving today, and began to push Sarah back to leave the room. My brother and his wife tried to force Sarah to leave with them. When I tried to talk them out of leaving, they ignored me and did not even look back. Seeing Sarah reaching out to me in resistance to her parents, I hastily pulled her towards me. Caught off guard, Kate let go of Sarah's hand and cried out, but I shielded Sarah behind me, putting some distance between us and the couple. They spouted aggressive words, attempting to reclaim their daughter, and stormed towards us in a rage. My husband and I managed to force them out of the room, asserting that we would never allow them to take Sarah away. A police officer who had been waiting at the entrance instantly detained the couple. The police officers were trying to calm my brother and his wife, who were totally confused by the unexpected situation. Sam insisted to the officer that we should be the ones apprehended, claiming they won't give back my daughter. My sister and her husband took her from our home and are keeping her here. Please rescue her quickly. This isn't the time to hold me down. I won't run or hide, so let me go. But take instead. Our daughter, who had noticed the commotion and came out, hid behind me and spoke with Sarah in a baffled manner, discussing that she was not locked up at all. Not sure whether Sam heard their conversation, but he sternly told Sarah to come with him. But she was too frightened by her father's intense anger to leave my side. Kate simply stood quietly next to the officer, glancing at my brother as if she had something to say to him and Sarah, but didn't. But when my brother, who was causing a scene at the entrance, was completely restrained by the officer, my husband held up his smartphone in front of my brother's eyes. Noticing this, I told Sarah and our daughter to wait again in the previous room and close the door to keep the sound from leaking. That's my husband confirmed this. He silently started playing a video he had filmed at my brother's house the night before. Upon seeing it, the couple's faces instantly turned pale. The video began with the house key slowly turning and two men, apparently using a duplicate key, quietly entering the room. The men, in a good mood from their appearance, greeted my husband and his friends, mentioning my brother's name. One of them joked, "Hey, how much did you pay?" He said I could get a 30 discount because the woman is his own sister, haha. They looked at my husband and his friends with a smirk on their faces. When my husband's friend gave a vague response, avoiding a direct answer, one of them boasted about the specific amount of money. He said that they were good friends with my brother and his wife, and that they were able to get a discount from them. They continued, "We're lucky we get to play with the kid today, too." And the man's profile as he laughed was hideously villainous, to the point where calling him a monster would be an insult to a Aunt Sparkrilch. I couldn't see the screen from where I was, but the audio alone was enough to give me goosebumps. Afterwards, my husband's friend started grilling the men, asking if they often visited his house and if they always came in pairs. They seemed to notice something was amiss and started asking where Sarah and I were. Upon seeing my husband's angry expression as he stated we weren't there, they seemed to finally realize the situation. Realizing they were not among friends, the men hastily fled. But since it was unclear whether they hadn't noticed my husband's recording until the end or if they had intentionally not disclosed it. It seems like my brother, who's supposed to be a close friend of them, had never heard of the video before. He's trembling. He desperately insisted he knew nothing and was being framed. Until I watched the video, I thought my brother was innocent and that my sister-in-law had planned everything. But there's clear evidence in the video that my brother, Sam, handed over to me and little Sarah. No one was convinced by him pretending to know nothing, and he was taken away by the police. Kate was pretending to have no involvement. But the officers who had previously heard from Sarah had many questions for her. So they requested her to come along, and thus Sam and Kate were both taken into custody. Later, during the police investigation, Sam and Kate confessed everything and were arrested on the spot. Apparently, Kate used to invite men over to her house on the nights when Sam was working and received money. When she realized there was a particular demand for children, she took advantage of Sarah, making sure not to violate the law. It was to help her mother, who was being bullied by some nasty people. Innocent Sarah did as she was told and posed for photos. These were mere pictures of a child with no suggestive connotations whatsoever. Kate would take these innocent photos with a disposable camera, have them developed, and then show them to her clients, instigating a kind of bidding war. Moreover, she would only lend out the photos, never selling them. As much as I despised her for this, if that was all there was to it, it should have ended as a matter of no concern to my husband and me. But when Sam noticed Kate's business, he didn't scold her or try to protect their daughter. Instead, he started to gather men who would become their clients. He figured that if he increased the number of employees, the revenue would also increase. Thus, with this simple logic, he decided to involve me in his business. Of course, I would never agree to this if he simply asked. So he came up with a plan to force me to work and use photos from the scene as a continued threat. Thus, they carefully picked a day when the neighbors were not around and locked me and Sarah in their house. Then they exchanged their house key for a large sum of money and left on a vacation to prove they had nothing to do with what was happening. What Sam and Kate didn't foresee was Sarah, who used to obey Kate's every word, revealed a situation to protect me. Sarah didn't understand most of the conversations happening at home, but she knew that the nasty people were targeting us. She confided in me, and that's when the hellish situation in Sam's house was exposed. That night, after learning about Sarah's situation, I asked my husband to capture the nasty people's activities on camera. First, their unguarded information spill helped the police to act immediately after I reported them. At the same time, I made a report to the Child Welfare Services to ensure Sarah's safety. We informed the police about Sam and Kate coming to our house and had them arrested, finally protecting Sarah from the two of them. My brother and sister-in-law, who were arrested on severe charges such as violations of child welfare laws and the laws to prevent prostitution, did not escape imprisonment. I did not escape imprisonment despite being a first-time offender. The pictures of the child that had been taken and stored over several years were deemed particularly egregious. At some actuals, once an image is leaked on the internet, it can never be removed completely. I was chilled to the bone when the police told us this, but luckily, because Kate hadn't digitized the photos of Sarah or sold them and had kept them securely stored, we were able to prevent any leaks. So, I don't understand how my once kind and reliable brother, Sam, could turn into such a horrific person. We've been helping each other out normally up until then, and it scares me that we had no idea he had become so twisted. Anyway, I hope they will face the reality of what they had done. After the arrest of Sam and Kate, the monsters who were likewise questioned by the police later seemed to argue that they were innocent since it was just an attempted crime. However, the fact that someone's child's photograph was found in their house, and that they seemed to be involved in some kind of other crimes confessed by Sam and Kate during the investigation led to their arrest on multiple charges as well. After dealing with the monsters and their associates lurking around us, we then inquired at the Child Protective Services about what would happen with Sarah. With both her parents arrested and no one to care for her, it was decided that Sarah would be taken away from her parents, who were absolutely unfit as guardians. That was a relief, but Sam and I don't have parents, and my sister-in-law's family has cut all ties. We learned that if we can't find someone who's willing to take her in after reaching out to the family of my sister-in-law, she would have to go to a foster care facility. After consulting with my husband, we decided to adopt Sarah. She was, after all, a person I owed a lot to, and I didn't want to part ways with Sarah, whom I adore as if she were my own daughter. Luckily, my husband agreed, and we took this opportunity to move to the countryside where my in-laws live. My daughter was excited to spend more weekends with her beloved grandparents, and was overjoyed that her wish for an older sister came true with the arrival of Sarah, whom she adores. Finally freed from her parents, Sarah, with her remarkable adaptability as a child, is already getting used to her new environment as an older sister and is starting to live a peaceful and happy life